Can you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Hi, my name's Kyla Jeffrey. I am the VP of Customer Success at HeroX.
And what is HeroX?
Great question. So, put really simply, our mission is to enable human ingenuity to create a better future.
Here I was talking to Kyla Jeffrey, who no longer works at this company. But at the time, she worked at HeroX, doing a job that she described as enabling human ingenuity to create a better future. Which, sounds good. I mean, it sounds vague, but surely we can get more specific than that.
And if you think about what that looks like, we're all about connecting people. So connecting people to the problems that matter and the problems they're interested in solving.
Okay. Still a bit vague. Maybe an example will help.
And so one example of that is NASA's Lunar Loo Challenge, where NASA needed a new toilet design to work on the moon's surface. They posted the problem on HeroX and received designs from all over the world.
Okay. Toilet designs from all over the world that would be sent into space. Now you're speaking my language. Today, we're talking about a competition put on by NASA to crowdsource design ideas for a new toilet for a 1-week trip to the moon. It was called the Lunar Loo Challenge and put on right in the heart of the pandemic. While we'll get into some of the finer details later, my first question was, how many people decided that in June of 2020, the best use of their time was to think up ways to efficiently poop on the moon? How many entries did you guys end up getting for this challenge?
We had over 2,000 entries.
Wow.
It's 2,068 to be exact, and they came from 100 different countries across the world. Whenever you start talking about using the bathroom in space, our experience is that it goes a little viral, and that always ends up with many more entries than a standard challenge.
How many entries does a general HeroX competition garner?
Most challenges do not get 2,000 entries. Most of our sponsors, people that have the problems, don't want 2,000 entries, right? Imagine having to look through 2,000 toilet designs to figure out your right toilet. So I'd say on average, you're probably closer to 30 to 100 entries.
Did you as a team think about why that might be, or discuss why that's such an attractive thing to innovators?
I mean, I think it's a human problem, something everyone thinks about. It just resonates with people. It makes them laugh. You can lie awake at night in bed, not being able to sleep, and you can think about how would an astronaut go to the toilet on the moon? And it's one of those captivating type of problems.
Did you talk to people who going to the bathroom in space kept them up at night?
I did not talk to anyone specifically and ask, hey, were you brainstorming your idea late at night? But I will say there were many people that put in countless hours, teams of people that put countless hours, days, weeks into their solutions.
If you've ever laid awake at night wondering about how an astronaut would go to the bathroom on the moon, tonight you can rest easy. On this episode, we follow one man and his team's critical mission to take on the Lunar Loo Challenge and make the most efficient space toilet the galaxy has ever seen. Welcome back to Someone's in Here, a podcast where we share stories about going to the bathroom. I'm your host, Ben Castleman. Thank you so much for tuning in.
My name is Boone Davidson. I led a team of other engineers designing a new space toilet to be used on the lunar surface.
Could you call yourself the rocket scientist of toilets?
I I do say I'm a space toilet designer or design engineer.
To friends or in your LinkedIn profile? Where do you say that?
On my YouTube channel just says engineer by day, space toilet designer by night.
This is Boone Davidson. Some of us know him as the rocket scientist of toilets. But way before all that, in January of 1993, he was able to attend the launch of STS-54, a mission that sent 5 NASA astronauts into space for 5 days. One of those astronauts was Susan Helms, the first U.S. military woman to go to space, and up until a year ago, the world record holder for longest spacewalk, meaning she had spent the most time in space outside of a spacecraft in human history. More importantly, to 7-year-old Boone, Susan had been dating his uncle, and this got him a front row seat to an actual NASA space launch.
My first memories of becoming interested in space are when we got to fly out to Florida and see Susan fly into space.
Do you remember how that made you feel?
I remember it being loud. I mean, I was 7 years old at that time, so I don't remember much before that. But I definitely was obsessed with it after I got to go see an actual shuttle launch into space. And then a year after that, she actually came and stayed with us up at our house here in Bellingham and presented at an assembly at my elementary school. And that was a pretty crazy experience to have her there and talking to the school. In fact, she talked about space toilets at that assembly. I don't have a lot of memories from 8 years old, but that's one thing I vividly remember is the big laugh she got when she talked about having to use a toilet in zero gravity.
Do you remember how you felt about Susan at that time in your life?
I mean, she gave me butterflies, in my stomach. I was overjoyed that I got to personally know an astronaut, which was, I think, pretty rare. Not many kids get to grow up personally meeting an astronaut or having them stay at their house. It's like meeting a movie star, or at least it was for me. So I definitely felt lucky to know her.
Boone had developed a childhood hero and a real love for space. But as Susan was logging 211 days in space, Boone was growing up, graduating high school, college, and eventually becoming an engineer. As time went on, his dream of working for NASA, or going to space himself, began to feel a galaxy away. Until 2020, a time when most felt more earthbound than ever. Boone was scrolling the internet, and he stumbled upon something called the Lunar Lou Challenge.
I was just scrolling through Yahoo News and looking for something interesting to read, and I saw an article about this through, I think it was Business Insider. I don't know what it is about the space toilet that spoke to me, but maybe it was just that callback to that assembly back when I was 8 years old that when Susan spoke about the space toilet.
The article had the headline, NASA is offering up $20,000 to anyone who can design a better space toilet for astronauts sent to the moon. It was long, but it piqued Boone's interest, not only because of his space dreams, but he was an engineer now. Maybe this was something he could actually do.
What led me to actually pursue the challenge was initially sort of a joke. The very first thing I thought of before I thought about any sort of design ideas was what would be a funny name for a space toilet. And NASA's well known for coming up with really creative acronyms. So I just started, I Googled synonyms for toilet, and I settled on the word throne. And within the word throne, at the very end, you have ONE. So I came up with the Translunar Hypercritical Repository 1. And I thought that was pretty good.
You seriously were thinking of the name before you were knowing that you were going to commit?
That's correct. Yeah, the first step was if I can come up with a good name, maybe I'll move on to step number 2. With that name, I was like, I can't let that go to waste. I should probably try to think of some ideas and see if I come up with anything.
And maybe work on the engineering and the
exactly.
specifications.
Yeah, second priority.
Equipped with the idea for the TRH-1, or at least the idea for the name, Boone decided to enter the Lunarloo Challenge. But what exactly did the Lunarloo Challenge entail?
I don't know if you're familiar with the Artemis program, but NASA is looking to land the first woman and the next man on the moon.
That's Kyla Jeffrey, again, from Hero X.
Eventually establish a sustained human presence on the moon, and to be able to take those learnings and get astronauts to Mars. So it's a very ambitious program.
How critical is a good environment to go to the bathroom to the success of their missions?
It's critical, right? It's a mission critical element. If you can't figure it out, you can't have people living on the moon for a week. So there's really no way around it. It needs to be solved.
You hear that? It was mission critical. So yeah, that was the challenge in front of Boone and contestants all around the world. And they were only given 2 months to do it. So after reading all of the specifications and guidelines, Boone got to work. He decided to collaborate with some of his friends, but still felt like the information about going to the bathroom in space that he found online was lacking. And then the thought occurred to him, what if he reached out to Susan, the astronaut that first sparked his interest in space?
It is a weird thing to ask somebody, who's been to space, like, hey, can I ask you a bunch of questions about what it's like to poop in space? Especially when she's like your childhood idol, somebody you looked up to when you were little. I sent that email with, I think my feeling was excitement. Like, this is an actual chance I have to reconnect with Susan. That'd be pretty rad. I didn't really know how Susan would react to it, but I figure worst case scenario, she just says no thanks.
But Susan didn't say no thanks. She said yes.
It's been 26 years since she had come and stayed with us. So I didn't really know what to expect from our conversation, but she was lovely and very, kind, and we got some laughs, and I think I was nervous at first, but the conversation was very organic.
Did she know how meaningful she had been to you while you were talking to her?
That's a great question. No, I don't think she did. I didn't really reveal much to her about, how much I idolized her as a kid.
Did you talk holistically about her experience, or was it pretty strictly about going to the bathroom in space?
We didn't want to waste her time. We had a select list of questions, and we wanted to use the time she was able to give us, efficiently. But it was still a comfortable, organic conversation with some laughs in there. And she came prepared with some visual aids even. She had with her toiletries kit, like a big blue bag with all the things that she had with her on the International Space Station, that she got to bring that back to Earth with her and keep that. In particular, stuff that we didn't really learn from the internet about was the issues that female astronauts had to face dealing with toilets that were pretty specifically designed for male anatomy. In the early days of NASA, there were no female astronauts, so any sort of design was going to be male-based. But even after women astronauts became more of a thing, the toilets were still, it seemed, designed for men with the idea that women would make it work. One of the things that Susan mentioned was on the International Space Station when she was up there were 2 toilets. There was an American one and a Russian one, and the Russian one had a filter in it that couldn't handle menses. So if you're menstruating in space, you couldn't use one of the 2 available toilets up there.
So you think it did end up being like a big advantage to talk to an astronaut, but especially a female astronaut?
Yeah, huge. There's a lot you can learn about space toilets from just reading online or watching videos of astronauts giving a tour of the bathroom on the ISS, but you can't ask that person questions. There's no back and forth conversation. So to actually be able to interview somebody who has used space toilets was incredible, and definitely influenced our design greatly. We met all the challenge requirements, and on top of that, we tried to tackle these other issues that female astronauts had to deal with.
What are the biggest challenges for astronauts going to the bathroom?
Susan was telling us that there is some suction. Once you deposit your solid waste into the receptacle, but it's a pretty weak suction. And so once in a while you would get some nudges from within. So getting bumped by a turd floating underneath you is not the most glamorous side of being an astronaut.
Susan also told them that some of the toilets she used had such small holes that she couldn't pee and poop at the same time. There was a pee hose in those bathrooms that allowed the male astronauts to perform number 1 and number 2 at the same time, but it wasn't really a solution for women.
The muscles that control your pee and your poop are pretty linked. When you're doing it here on Earth, you're usually doing both at the same time. And so women would often have to control it so that they could do one at a time. So they have to hold in their poop while they peed through the hose, because it was really difficult to get the hose in the right place while they're sitting with their leg restraints to the seat. So not so much a problem for men, but a problem with female anatomy.
Historically, has it been harder for female astronauts to go to the bathroom than male astronauts?
So I think because space travel began with a male focus and without females as part of those crew, a lot of the baseline technology was designed for a male anatomy. And so it's certainly, something that these newer technologies have to make sure they're considering and have to be a little bit more creative from maybe older school approaches.
Gotcha. In the guidelines, there are specific amounts of urine and fecal matter that the toilet had to be able to accommodate. Do you know how your team came up with those numbers?
Yeah, great question. So those numbers are provided by NASA. Astronauts, when they're on missions like this, are eating and drinking a very regimented amount of food and liquids. So they have a pretty good idea of what the human waste will be of an astronaut on something like this.
The toilets needed to be able to collect up to 1 liter of urine, 500 grams of fecal matter, 500 grams of diarrhea. And then it said an average of 114 grams of female menses per crew per day. Why is it such a specific number for menses? Like when the other 3 are more round numbers?
That's a great question. I have no idea why it is such a specific number. Potentially just the way they made those calculations, but I'm not sure.
Okay. As someone who doesn't menstruate, I was wondering if I was missing anything.
There is no such common, every woman is menstruating 114 grams. So there's certainly, diversity, and that's probably just what they decided the number was that it had to be able to handle for their astronauts.
Well, I thought that was weird, but who knows? Maybe there's a reason why menses specifications have to be so specific, and poop and urine can be a little less so. There's some history that I learned about NASA that I kept thinking about when reporting this story. And then, after all this 114 grams of menses business, well, I couldn't really ignore it anymore. It's a true story about a time where NASA was actually quite imprecise. And it's a story I learned through song.
This is the true story of the first American woman that they ever sent to space, whose name was Sally Ride. I hope you enjoy. Remember when NASA sent a woman to space for only 6 days, and they gave her 100 tampons, 100 tampons. And they asked, will that be enough? 'Cause they didn't know if that was enough.
That was Marcia Belsky. She's a comedian and the artist behind the song 100 Tampons. I heard Marcia's song live a few years ago, and it stuck with me. And since we were exploring the difficulty that women had going to the bathroom in space, and because the Lunar Loo was partly in service of sending the first female NASA astronaut to the moon, I decided to ask Marcia if she'd be willing to give us her thoughts on how far we've come since NASA first sent a woman into space. How much did you know about Sally Ride specifically before writing the song?
I didn't know much about her at all. But then since then, I've learned a lot about her personality and all these like great things about her. And she was not really an astronaut. Basically, like Russia had sent a woman to space. So America, not wanting to be shown up by Russia, was like, we need to send a woman to space. And so they were sort of recruiting athletic mathematicians from like colleges.
That also, I feel like, backs up the song a little bit, that they were like, Russia had a woman in space, we have to get one. What does it take? Like how many
tampons? And they tried to give her a makeup kit too.
Yeah,
and
how
she
much
was
makeup
like,
does she need? How many tampons?
Exactly.
When you wrote it, were you trying to say something social or political? Were you trying to just like get out a feeling or emotion?
That's what's crazy is like my other songs, yes. My other songs I write politically motivated, like trying to get some catharsis for things. This song was literally just like a story that made me laugh. And of course, I'm trying to say certain things about like men's discomfort around like menstruation, but I like really just thought it was funny and then got the tune in my head.
Have you also like had experiences that you feel like were like that? A moment where you were asked your own version of the 100 tampon question?
I think I probably have experienced things like that. I can't really think of anything off of the top of my head, but one of the cool things about the song was that, interestingly enough, there were female engineers who still work at NASA who messaged me and were like, yeah, I can't share this publicly, but let's just say things aren't necessarily perfect here.
Yeah. I love the line, they're literally rocket scientists.
These are our nation's greatest minds. They are literally rocket scientists.
Because it's like, that's the saying, like, these are the smartest people that we have. And they are not considering or totally ignorant of like how a woman's body works. I guess, what does it say about America or the world that some of the smartest men know so little about periods?
But some of the smartest men know so little about women in general.
As one of the smartest men, I'd just like to say, we're listening and we're learning. If you met an astronaut today, would you immediately be impressed? Like, are there any jobs we look up to in the same way that we used to?
Go with me on this. The people I admire the most are astronauts and musical theater actors because it requires about the same level of dedication and physical and mental discipline. And that's why it's like a lot of them are not good conversationalists. You know what I mean? Astronauts, actors. Like, do I want to talk to them at a party for an hour? No. But I would love to talk to them for 5 minutes. Absolutely.
The work that they're putting into their job is unfortunately detracting from their social skills.
You can only build so many skills in life. Do you know what I mean? Like it's like you meet people, and that's another never meet your heroes thing, is that a lot of times people who are extremely dedicated to their craft are not putting a lot of work into their social selves. And it makes sense. But that's why, like, when you're like, God, why can this person not talk? And then you find out they're like a quantum physicist or something.
Okay, thank you for going on that detour with me. While being a rocket scientist might not much impress Shania Twain, being an astronaut impressed both Marcia and Boone quite a bit. And despite the classic advice, Boone did meet his hero twice, and it inspired him to make a better toilet. And now that he had his hero's advice, I wanted to dive deeper into how exactly Boone and his team attempted to fix the problem of going to the bathroom on the way to the moon. Can you take me through the design of the throne in like as simple terms as possible?
Yeah. So the throne is sort of a collection of existing technologies all slapped into one. which is why we think it'll work without having to actually build a prototype. So the throne is a memory foam seat on top of a bladeless ring fan on top of a diaper genie with some Orbeez thrown into it for liquid stabilization. So those are the sort of easy terms for people to imagine in their heads. So the memory foam seat just gives you a good solid fit around your legs. The bladeless ring fan, if you're familiar with the Dyson Air Multiplier, that's one of the more popular models of bladeless ring fans. It's just a big open ring that seemingly magically produces airflow. It's not actually magic. It's just that it looks that way because you don't see any exposed blades like a typical fan. So that sort of was our way of replacing suction because, as Susan mentioned, the suction was pretty weak. We ended up settling on the ring fan idea after some other less successful ideas, one of which was magnetic poop. We thought, is there any way you could make a healthy diet with enough iron in it to make your poop magnetic? And there's limited research out there on magnetic poop, very limited. But from what we could find, it was not even close to a healthy amount.
What kind of foods have high iron?
I know broccoli has a lot in it. The more purple it is, the more iron it has, I believe, is what I read. But you don't have a lot of fresh vegetables in space unless you're on a really short mission. So that was a hopeful but quickly shot down idea.
Wow. Changing the poop itself to make a better space toilet? Now that's the kind of thing that we at Someone's In Here are going to have to investigate a little further. To your knowledge, has NASA ever considered changing the poop itself rather than the toilet?
I don't know the answer for that. If they've looked to see if we can have our astronauts have some more magnetic poop, I have not heard anything either way from NASA on whether that's something they have looked into.
NASA, if you're listening, I mean, you got to get on that. Anyway, back to Boone.
And then below the bladeless ring fan, we went with a design similar to a diaper genie for any parents out there who have ever had to change diapers. It's just, there's a bag inside a container and a lid that opens and closes, and you can throw it in. And then the last thing we threw in there in the design was most people are familiar with Orbeez, a kid's toy that are little beads that you can drop in water and they absorb and get really big. So they're super absorbent polymers. They're the same sort of crystals you find in diapers, again, to absorb liquid. And part of the challenge requirements were to stabilize your liquid so you didn't just have droplets floating around everywhere. You wanted to somehow stabilize everything. So those were the four elements: the memory foam seat, bladeless ring fan, diaper genie, and super absorbent polymers.
Okay. So you have a seat for comfort. You have the air multiplying fan to pull your deposits.
Mm-hmm.
What is the toy called again? The Orbeez?
Orbeez, yeah.
To make urine easier to suck down into a bag. Gotcha. Do you remember who came up with these different product references?
The ring fan, I was actually researching something and saw an ad on the sidebar for Dyson. And I was just like, I wonder if there's something there. The diaper genie was also something I came up with as a father of 3 small children. I use one every day. And so I think that was one of the earlier ideas I had. It was funny. I had this idea for a seat that could sort of form to whatever shape sat on it, because we're all different shapes, right? But it had a whole lot of parts to it. And then Cody, we brought on board. He's like, how does this work? What is it doing? And we're like, well, it'll form fit to any body type that sits on it. He's like, oh, you mean like memory foam? And we're like, oh, that's way better. We should do that. So yeah, Cody came up with the memory foam idea.
So the team had their design: a memory foam seat to fit every body, a bladeless ring fan to suck down each deposit, super absorbent polymers to bring any liquid to the bottom, and a diaper genie-like design to make tying up and replacing bags quick and easy. They also, in a direct response to the difficulty Susan had with peeing and pooping simultaneously, made sure to make the toilet opening big enough to accommodate both, and added what they called a genital guard to keep everything in. With the design for the throne complete, they had another call with Susan to get feedback from a real astronaut one more time.
So Susan actually, she had some pretty critical points of view on the toilet. Very valid points of view. I think the problem was what we were trying to show her what we had designed over Zoom in like the half hour we had with her, which was not a lot of time to kind of break it down. And I don't think we were able to adequately convey to her how everything worked together. So what she was able to gather from us didn't seem all that practical or feasible. And so she had some critiques that were slightly deflating. Like we came out of that meeting a little sad that she hadn't been, over the moon about the design. But at the same time, we were just like, we also didn't do a very good job of explaining it to her. So we'll see how it shakes out. Maybe we can still have a shot at this.
What was the process like of finalizing and submitting your design?
We were actually still fine-tuning it up until the last hour. And then I submitted it with an hour to spare.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was a little hectic at the end there, trying to get every little piece in there that we wanted. But we were pretty happy with it when we were all done.
Did you talk about the language you were going to use beforehand?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we try to use some tact in our, I think we referred to poop a lot as solid waste or solid deposits or, something that's just a little more classy than referring to it as poop or crap.
Did you feel like there are aspects of going to the bathroom that are inappropriate to mention during a toilet design competition?
No, I don't think so. I think you just have to say it in the right words, especially if you're like me and hoping that one day you get a job at NASA. You don't want to say something that's going to make them think you're unprofessional.
What were you thinking about how you stacked up to the thousands of other submissions?
I felt good. I felt like the likelihood of winning was low because of how many people were competing. But I also felt like our design was good enough and our technical writing was great. And so we could be a contender. Definitely felt like we hadn't let Susan down. I thought our design was good enough that she wouldn't have felt like we wasted her time, which was a good feeling.
So Boone and the team hit submit and waited weeks for the people at HeroX to go through thousands of submissions. Eventually, after a long day of work, as he was winding down for bed, Boone decided to check his email.
I didn't check my email until 1 a.m. that night. And so I saw this email from 6:30 or something, and it said, you've been selected as first place. And the first time I read that, my brow furrowed because I was like, wait, I didn't read that right. I read the sentence again and I was like, okay, so this is a spam email. Like this is some sort of, where they're just trying to get my credit card number. What is this? And I looked at who it was from and I read the rest of the email. I was like, oh my God, this is real. Oh my God, we actually won. And so I immediately went into my wife's bedroom and I woke her up. And I knew that waking her up would probably scare her into thinking something was wrong with the children. So I was like, I woke her up. I was like, first off, the kids are fine. But I needed to let you know, I got an email from NASA. We won first place. And then the next day at a reasonable hour, I reached out to Kunal and then Josh and then Cody. And then I also reached out to Susan and got to give her the good news.
What was it like to give the news to everyone? What was it like to give the news to Susan?
It was an amazing feeling. Imagine you're somebody who interviews and hires people for jobs and you get to tell that person they get the job. Imagine delivering that news. That's kind of what I have equated to, because you're going to make that person's day. You might maybe making their year.
Do you feel like Susan was proud? Did she feel like she was a part of the team?
No, she was very proud. She, on a later Zoom call, because after the competition, we Zoomed with her a few more times. She, on a later Zoom call, she said she felt like she was the proud mom of Team Throne. And I thought that was a good title for her. There's nothing quite like getting approval of any kind from your childhood idol. I mean, there's just to have contact with your childhood idol is crazy. So to have achieved something with your childhood idol and getting her approval, it definitely outranks anything Hero X. Nothing against Hero X, but it's a big deal to me that Susan was pleased that we won.
Besides connecting with Susan, what felt like the most meaningful about participating?
The idea that something I worked on could end up on the moon is a big deal for me. Even if Susan hadn't been a part of this project, if any element of the throne makes it to NASA's final product that ends up getting used on the moon, I'm going to be able to say that I helped design something that's up there.
Did the momentum from winning the competition like make you feel like your dream was more within reach, or like re-sparked a dream?
Yeah, I as soon as that happened, I a lot changed about me. It definitely made me more confident. It's given me sort of renewed energy in this dream I had as a kid to become an astronaut. Like, I'd love to work for NASA. That seems actually within the realm of possibility now. And don't tell my employer, but I've applied to 8 or 9 jobs at NASA. No nibbles yet. We'll see. Depending on what happens with SpaceX's Starship and colonizing of the moon and Mars, some people anticipate that we'll need 1 million people on Mars by the late 2030s. I don't know if there's any actual reality in that prediction, but if there is, and I'm, an engineer with space enthusiasm, there's still a chance that I could actually get to space too.
This competition had a real impact on Boone's life. It was a way for him to connect with a hero, to rejuvenate a lifelong dream, and to create new dreams for the future. But the biggest change in Boone's life during this time is one we still haven't mentioned. Another moment that felt like the stars aligned.
So we found out we were pregnant just a couple of weeks before I first read that article about the Lunarloo Challenge and started thinking up design ideas. And so when we ended up winning, it just seemed kind of fitting with how everything lined up with the pregnancy and the competition and all this craziness that has happened to us, that we find some name from this experience and give it to this baby, at least as a middle name, maybe not as a first name. I think it was Emma's idea, wife's idea, to use Helms as a middle name. I was like, I love that idea. So he's named Hawk Helms Davidson.
What was Susan's reaction to hearing the news that you had done that?
She reacted with the elation I was hoping that news would elicit. And by a funny coincidence, next to her on the desk she was sitting at, she reached over and she pulled over a baby shower card that says, it's okay if you want to name your baby after me. Totally cool. So she had that as a joke. I don't know if somebody had given that to her or if she had bought it as a joke, but she ended up sending that to us. So I've got it in my drawer here, and also sent Hawk a gift, a stuffed rocket. Yeah, she definitely reacted the way I was hoping she would.
Nice. Just that also low-key might have increased the chances of your kids meeting Susan.
It's true. That was not necessarily the motivation, but it definitely could help.
When Boone Davidson met Susan Helms, it changed his life. It gave him a dream, a penchant for reaching for the stars, and eventually, it may have allowed him to leave a very specific type of mark on the moon, one that no one could ever wipe away. These days, Boone reports that Hawk Helms Davidson has a planetarium projector in his room. So every night, he falls asleep staring at the stars, the moon, or whichever part of the galaxy he wants. Unfortunately, NASA's Artemis program has been delayed a few times, and they now don't expect to land anyone on the moon until 2028. But after that, they're aiming to establish an entire moon base. And with more people traveling to the moon, so too will their deposits, meaning poop, P, and menses, all in varying amounts of grams and liters. Someday, man will make a space toilet efficient and accommodating enough for all astronauts. But the infinite mysteries of the universe will remain. It gives me some comfort that we'll always have our heroes, whether it be astronauts, musical theater actors, or whoever finally discovers the iron-rich diet that makes poop magnetic, to guide us through space and time. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend or loved one. It would also mean a lot if you left a review on Apple Podcasts. Someone's in Here was created, edited, and produced by me, Ben Castleman. Thank you so much to Boone Davidson, Kyla Jeffrey, and Marcia Belsky. Follow Marcia Belsky on Instagram at Marcia Sky. You can also listen to 100 Tampons, her song featured in this episode, or any of her other songs, on all major streaming platforms. The theme song, which you are listening to now, is by Matt and Alex Schumann. The cover art is by Yeji Kim. This episode contains original music composed by Gabe Grand. Editorial notes provided by Adam Yates, Jacob Sherman, Ali Castleman, and Adar Shaw. Special thanks to Jack Core. Follow us and reach out at someone'sinhere_podcast on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, or at someone'sinhere.pod@gmail.com. Thank you again for listening. I'll talk to you next week.